15 pies and 1 cake. 15 pies sat together on the swaying row of conjoined rectangular folding tables in Ethan Waite's backyard, proud as Mrs. Asher's cats, waiting like everyone else for the rehearsal dinner to start. Ethan counted them from where he sat on the splintering steps of the old back porch at Waite's Landing, just out of the last-minute setup chaos. Tonight was serious business. You could tell by the good china, not a Pyrex or a pie tin on the tables, and the actual wedding wasn't even until tomorrow. Marian and Lena's grandmother and her Aunt Dell, and everyone else on Team Wedding, even the bride herself, Ethan's old English teacher and future stepmother, Lillian English, had outdone themselves, reluctant recruits or not. By the time they were through, every half-decent pie maker in town had chipped in. These weren't pies money could buy, Ethan knew. These pies had to be earned. Raspberry lattice crust, peach double crust, apple crimp crust, blueberry crumble crust, s'mores graham cracker crust, lemon chess with cream, chocolate chess with cream, chocolate silk with chocolate cream, coconut cream with extra coconut cream, lemon meringue, jumbleberry, wildberry, blackberry, blueberry, no-bake strawberry, even one lopsided tunnel of fudge cake, half melted in the evening heat, though it wasn't a pie at all. Ethan and Lena had made that one themselves, if only for sentimental reasons. Around Gatlin, pies meant only one thing: love. At least, that's what they meant to anyone who had ever known Amma, Ethan's honorary grandmother, and uncontested #1 champion blue ribbon baker of the Gatlin County Fair annual pie bake-off. But she was gone now, and it hurt to think about it. So when Ethan got to the end of the pies, he just kept counting. 15 pies, 1 cake, 7 platters of butterscotch bars, 12 cream of casseroles, 6 rainbow jello salads, 6 ambrosia fruit salads, 240 biscuits, 6 tubs of honey butter, 10 pitchers of lemonade, 10 more of sweet tea. Nearly 100 upstanding citizens of Gatlin, South Carolina, and more than 880 Jordan almonds. Ethan's fingers were raw from wrapping them in netting, which everyone had been doing for days. And one wheel of fate, he thought. That's what had brought them all here, to this day and to these pies and to this backyard. Of that, he had no doubt. Because that was what Ethan Waite saw in his backyard the night of his father's rehearsal dinner, more than anything else. Even if he couldn't see the wheel exactly, he could feel it, and it would take more than 15 pies to distract him from that, especially when those pies weren't even baked by the one person whose pies he'd grown up eating. It all just felt wrong, like the final destination of a forking road that never should have been taken all those years ago, one that led somewhere no mortal was ever meant to go. It wasn't exactly the most celebratory thought for the day before his father's wedding, but that didn't mean Ethan could stop himself from thinking it, because the wheel of fate has a way of wrecking everything it ever rolls past, and now we're all just left to sort out the pieces, to pretend this is how it was always supposed to be. Ethan could feel his one wrinkled white Oxford dress shirt growing damp and sticky in the warm twilight air. I hate fate. Ethan looked out over the circle-topped, white tablecloth-covered card tables that had been borrowed from the church and set up in his backyard for tonight's party. An orchard basket full of peaches and daisies sat in the center of each one, surrounded by little tea lights in mason jars, and a stack of Mrs. English's favorite books, including all the ones she had taught Ethan and Lena. Ethan could see Marian's meticulous handiwork in everything, which made sense, because Marian, along with Lena's grandma Emmeline, had taken over the wedding itself. Everyone was certainly trying to make this a party. The cracked driveway had been glued back together with asphalt, and flowers had been replanted with new black dirt along its border. The patchy rectangle of backyard lawn was filling up with his Georgia cousins, not to mention half of Gatlin. They'd all turned out in their Sunday best on a Friday night to begin the weekend of festivities that meant Mitchell Waite was marrying their English teacher. If that wasn't a scandal, it was at least something to talk about. Hallelujah! Ethan watched as the crowd began to flow into the backyard. The length of the receiving line was a testament to just how long Lillian English had been teaching. It was snaking down the Waite driveway, longer than the endless jasmine that Ethan's mother had slowly coaxed into a vine along the driveway wall so many years ago. In line were the Snows and the Ashers, both mothers and daughters in matching blowouts from the Snip and Curl. Longtime best friends, Savannah and Emily, also had matching spray tans from the new Island Glow over in Somerville. The Chases were there, without the perpetually chubby Charlotte, who was now scrawny as a baguette and living in Paris in a study abroad program, a fact that her parents managed to work into just about every other sentence. The Westerlys had brought Eden, but she looked like she was about 6 months pregnant and not too happy to be at a wedding, seeing as she'd sort of skipped that part herself. Her parents didn't talk about that at all. The guys from the team were all there, or at least their families were. The Pettys had showed up without Earl, who was still playing for state. Emery was there, though. He had never made it past the first Thanksgiving at college, and now worked at the gas station where Ethan and Link and the guys used to buy car magazines, buy the Stop Steal. Life outside of Gatlin was just too much to handle for some people. Emery's parents shoved him through the line, looking about as happy as the Westerlys about it. Who else? Ethan studied the crowd. The Wickses, the Wattses, and the Birches had also come to pay their respects. So had the Richmonds, the Honeycutts, and the Ebbets. Principal Harper was getting punch for Mrs. Abernathy, who never changed a bit. Miss Hester from the attendance office was showing off her perfect purple manicure to Mr. Lee, the world's worst history teacher. Mr. Hollenbach stood behind Coach Cross and her husband. Even Mr. Hollingsworth from the school board was standing behind them. It was like some kind of weird casserole of Ethan's whole life, he thought, all baked in the backyard heat until it congealed into leftovers that he could shove into a ball of aluminum foil and hide in his backpack, something he could take with him back to Massachusetts and beyond. Home. At least that's what this was supposed to be, wasn't it? But no matter how many folks from Ethan's past showed up, it still didn't make this weekend feel right. He'd expected weird. His whole life had been nothing else. But this feels really wrong. What is it? And am I the only one who feels it? Ethan's dad was marrying his old teacher, who had also once been body swapped for the most powerful demon in a few universes. Was that it? He had tried not to let it bother him. After all, his dad seemed happy to be getting married. But now that the big day is tomorrow, Ethan was having more trouble with it than he wanted to admit. How had they all gotten to this crazy place? Ethan studied Mrs. Lillian, with her no-nonsense pale peach skirt suit, sensible shoes, and glass eye, tilting her head to try to hear everyone in the reception line. Which was impossible. Her family had run the local shooting range, out by the county line, and as the years went on, she heard almost less than she saw. Lillian English and Leela Everswaite, Ethan's future stepmother and his deceased mother, respectively, were as different as any two people could be. Not only would Leela Evers never be caught dead in a peach-colored skirt suit, but by now she probably would have kicked off her own shoes. Tomorrow, Lillian English would be walking down the aisle in her wedding cake of a dress, fluffy veil, and yes, shoes and all, and Ethan didn't know how he could face it. Seriously, is this how my life was supposed to go? Any of our lives? Is this the hand of destiny? The wheel of fate? If so, then who's behind that wheel? And what kind of idiot is doing the driving around here? Ethan tried to stop thinking about it, but it was hard to stop. If Amma hadn't met with the Bokor in New Orleans to trade her life for mine, would she still be here? And would I be in the other world? Ethan kept his eyes on the stream of Gatlin neighbors appearing in his yard. No more. I have to stop thinking like this. Now, Liv appeared in the driveway in a slim cream-colored shift, holding a shiny black bag that said Harrods. She'd chopped off all of her platinum hair at the chin. With every year, she looked more serious and more like a keeper. John stood next to her, hovering protectively as always. It looked like he had slept on the plane in the shirt he was wearing, which had yet to be tucked in. They were probably jet-lagged, as Liv was still studying at Oxford, and their flight had gotten in from D.C., and before that, London, only the day before. Liv had insisted they travel like mortals instead of incubuses, if only to get the mountain of wedding-related luggage here in one piece. At least, that was what she had said. Ethan wondered if there was more to it than that. With Liv, who tracked the science behind the caster world more closely than anyone in either the mortal or supernatural realm, you never knew. More often than not, she was preparing for a storm you didn't even see on the horizon. Ethan watched his friends skip the line and walk past his father. Liv made a beeline for Marion, who was guarding the pies by the punch bowl. He wanted to go talk to them, but he couldn't bring himself to go down into the crowd yet. Instead, the thoughts just kept coming. But really, if a lovesick incubus hadn't followed my mother out of a rare books library, would she have become a caster librarian? Would Marion have ever told my mom she was a keeper? Would she still have married my dad? Would I have even been born? Geez. Now, Link walked into the yard, rattling with random rocker chains and head-to-toe black despite the heat. He picked up his sticker name tag. Mrs. English had also insisted on name tags on account of the Georgia cousins, and slapped it on the back of an unsuspecting Principal Harper, who was busy congratulating the happy couple. Then Link ducked a tree branch and went to join Liv and John by Marion's side. Marion kissed him hello and went back to fussing with the pies, just as Amma would have done. Ethan's heart caught in his throat, and the questions returned. And if all that hadn't been in the cards, would fate have shown the same spread to a young seer from Waders Creek? Would those cards still have sent Amma to keep her eagle eye on my dad? Would the darkest caster of all time still have murdered my mom? You're a mess, aren't you? Lena finally sat down next to Ethan. Is it that obvious? She smiled. Her gauzy sundress was the color of a ripe Gatlin peach, just as the bride had requested. The tablecloths, the flowers, the napkins, even the netting around the Jordan almonds were all the peachiest peach possible. Except, of course, the actual peaches in the ambrosia fruit salad, because, ironically, they were white, marshmallow fluff being the key ingredient. Shake it off. It's just a wedding. You're just spooked, Ethan thought. Maybe the wheel of fate has already rolled enough all over all of us. Maybe from here on out, everything will be fine. It's pretty obvious. You okay? Lena threaded her arm through his. Ethan smiled at her. Yeah, of course. She squeezed his hand. Liar. Could you hear me? Ethan sighed. Freaking out about the wheel of fate? Of course I can, Ethan. Of course you can, Lil. He hadn't realized he was Celting, the unspoken caster language of communicating through mind and heart alone, but Lena had felt every word he was saying, as usual. You might as well have been shouting, she said, leaning her head against his shoulder. So I ditched kitchen duty. I thought I'd check in on the crazy. He gave up trying to pretend otherwise. I'm trying not to go there, honestly. I'm just off my game today. Ethan looked up at the sky. Clouds were rolling in over each other in great strokes and waves and puffs, but nothing was too out of the ordinary for a Gatlin summer night. Are you going dark on me? She said the words lightly, but they weren't light. Going dark had been Amma's words for the moods, supernatural or otherwise, that could overtake a person when their defenses, supernatural or otherwise, were down. Lena raised an eyebrow, and Ethan knew he wasn't going to be able to get out of answering. Sort of. He leaned back against the steps. It's like I can feel a storm about to break, or the rain coming, only for no reason. No reason? Lena asked, not quite innocently. I keep looking up at the sky, but there's nothing there, and I don't even know what I'm expecting to see. You don't? She looked like she was trying not to laugh. Something terrible, whatever it is. Something I'm dreading. Oh yeah, you're going dark, Lena mused, moving her hand up to the back of Ethan's neck. The touch of her warm fingers calmed him, which they always did, now that something didn't catch fire every time they made contact like it used to. What could be the reason? Let's see. I don't know. Maybe it's that your dad's getting married tomorrow? Don't remind me. Ethan smiled sheepishly. Give yourself a break. I don't know what I'd do if Macon even went on a date. Lena shuddered. Macon had been given a free pass on the wedding festivities, seeing as most of the town believed he was dead. He was threatening to show up tomorrow for the ceremony, but nobody believed him. Macon lived his life up at Ravenwood Manor in almost perfect solitude these days. Lucky dog. It's not just that, Ethan said. Though I do feel like a jerk because I know I should just be happy for him. You should, Lena agreed. And this is probably the hard part, right? The wedding weekend itself? She took in his gloomy expression before answering. Probably. Ethan drew a deep breath. So, I've got this. You really do, Lena smiled again. She leaned in and kissed him on the lips, and he slid his arms down to her waist. He was about to scoop her up onto his lap, despite his Georgia cousins watching, when she broke off the kiss, pulling back. Look, she pointed at her hair. She froze, as if a bee had landed on her head. Ethan realized her curls were twisting, as if in the wind. It was the castor breeze, which meant Lena was working some kind of cast of her on. What are you doing? Ethan asked. I don't think it's me, she said. I think it's someone else, or something powerful. The hair pricked along the back of Ethan's neck. Something's definitely in the air, and it's not love. Lena glanced over at the happy couple apologetically. Well, not just love. It sounded like a joke, but she was deadly serious. No, 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 no. Not now. Not this weekend. Not this weekend. But he knew it was pointless. There was no stopping that very wheel. A dog of a party. Holy crap, Ethan said. He wasn't smiling. Lena wasn't either. I was wrong, she nodded. It's not just your dad's wedding. No way. Not if you're feeling it too, Ethan said. Something's happening, and it's not from the world of mortals. Lena agreed with him, which didn't make him feel any better. I knew it. I felt it. Ethan stared at the curls, which were still twisting around Lena's shoulders. Her grip on him tightened, and he felt another shiver running from her hand down to the base of his spine. What do you think? Maybe it's left over from Mrs. English being, the most powerful demon in a faraway universe? It wasn't a chapter. Either one of them wanted to remember. The alter ego of their former English teacher, the Lilum. But then they had had more than their share of chapters like that. Something like that, Lena said, hopefully. You think that's all? The look on her face said otherwise. Ethan took a breath. If he felt it, and if Lena felt it, something was happening. Whatever it wasn't his imagination. Should we tell someone? Do something? Who would we tell? What would we do? Lena asked. Ethan thought about it as he watched his father, who had one arm around his future bride, ruin everything. He does look happy, Lena said. But still, Ethan nodded. Then he began to celt. The last time I felt like this was Halloween night, right after we met. Like the veil was down. Like I could feel the darkness coming, Elle. That's because it was, Ethan. That was Seraphine. Then what's this, Elle? I wish I knew. You guys are a regular party. Liv plopped herself down on the step next to Ethan. I see you've once again confused wedding and funeral. Let me help you sort it out then. This one is a wedding. The dominant emotion is joy. In that case, the mouth turns up. Got it, Ethan said. Wedding. Lena nodded. John leaned against the railing behind her. I hear it's catching. You two lovebirds getting any ideas? You should talk, Romeo. Link snorted, flopping on the step below the others. As he landed, the foundation of the old house seemed to shake. It was the fate of even this quarter incubus to be 100 times stronger than the world around him, foundations included. The Oxford crew. Finally, we're all back in one place again. It's about time, Lena said. She smiled at Liv and John, grabbing Link's hand. Hey now, let's show some love to the New Jersey crew, Link said. I know Jersey. I can't believe you guys took time off touring for this. Ethan looked at Link, who shrugged. Siren Song, the band Link had formed with a necromancer, an illusionist, and a darkborn, had managed to stay together even though, A, they were being hunted by a clan of powerful Ravenwood blood incubuses, and B, Ridley, the siren who had worked her power of persuasion on their behalf, as well as Lena's cousin and Link's girlfriend, had deserted them for fame and fortune in Hollywood. Oh, and their club had burned down. Nobody ever said the road to rock and roll superstardom was easy. You know I wasn't going to miss watching you walk your old man down the aisle, Link said. Then he quickly moved on to his favorite subject, the buffet. How's the pie? Who cares? It's not Amma's, Ethan said ruefully. Nothing is. Link sounded mournfully, though he didn't even eat mortal food anymore. But he had appreciated Amma's cooking in his mortal adolescence more than anyone. Speaking of our parents, my mom might be coming to the ceremony. And by that, I mean y'all should prepare yourselves in case my mom shows up for the ceremony. Really? Ethan was surprised. The last time he had seen Mrs. Lincoln, she had still been wandering around muttering that Satan was a woman and the world was ending. She wasn't that far off. Lena's mother, Seraphine, who had once taken over Mrs. Lincoln's body, wasn't exactly an angel, and the world had almost ended a few times. Yeah, maybe. She's doing pretty well. I mean, for her. She was the craziest woman alive, so the bar was low. She might get to come home soon. Link tried to look happy about it, so they all tried to look happy back. Mrs. Lincoln was a complicated woman, and she'd been living in a psychiatric care facility for a while now. That's great, John said. Right? Nobody answered. Nobody brought up the other complicated woman in Link's life. Or rather, the one who wasn't in his life anymore, either. Ridley Duchan's. It took only a second for Link to figure out the subject of their non-conversation. Stop, you guys. I'm fine, really. He shook his head. A guy wouldn't even have to be able to Celt to pick up what all you're all saying right now. But I'm over it. I mean her. Yeah, right, Ethan said, clapping his hand on Link's rock of a back. They'd all heard that one before. Ridley had ruined Link's life, over and over again, 1,000 times. Really. And even if I wasn't, it doesn't matter. It's Rid we all should be worried about. Link's expression darkened. Ethan knew the look. It meant Link was thinking about Knox, the guy Ridley had taken off with, her new boyfriend, her former band manager, and the guy who had owned the Darkcaster Club that they'd all been playing at until recently. But Ethan also knew Link wasn't wrong. Rid was in more trouble now than ever, and a much darker kind of trouble. Any news? Liv asked, softly. No good news, Link scowled. She was still somewhere in Hollywood, last time I checked. She has some kind of show. A show? She has 3 million YouTube followers, Ethan said. Lena kicked him. They'd made a pact not to bring up Ridley's newfound internet fame, at least not around Link. Ethan turned red. But, you know, the whole power of persuasion thing, that's probably not even a lot for a siren. It's okay. She can be famous, she can be successful, she can third-degree burns hot. She can love everyone in the world, except me. It doesn't matter. I'm still going to worry. Link looked truly miserable, and Ethan felt as sorry for his old best friend as he ever had. Any of the other times Rid had broken his heart. I guess part of me thought she'd come back for the wedding. Sorry, man, Ethan said. Nah, I think I'm relieved. I can't handle looking at her when everything's just so different. Ridley always had been almost uncomfortably good-looking, no matter how you felt about her. Ethan had to give her that. I know, I feel the same way. But I really believe that eventually we're going to find a way to help her, Lena said. Her cousin Ridley had turned into her old self, which wasn't much of a compliment, after being captured and caged, tortured and experimented on by the twisted incubus Silas Ravenwood, who had vowed to avenge the death of his grandfather, Abraham. Though none of it had been Ridley's fault, she had undergone a fundamental personality transition back to her darkest self. As a result, she wasn't exactly the most pleasant person to be around anymore, particularly for her heartbroken ex-boyfriend, who now reeked of partial mortality, in Rid's opinion. That the former love of her life now made her physically sick had turned out to be a huge bummer for everyone, except her new boyfriend, the even darker Knox Gates. Link was trying to man up and live through it, Ethan knew. He also knew that wasn't exactly easy. Not when you were as whipped as Link was. Megan and Grandma and Aunt Dell and Reese and I have been working on a plan to help Ridley, Link said. My whole family. We're going to figure out a way to undo whatever it is that Silas Ravenwood did to her, and then we're going to bring her back, I promise. She didn't mention the part about how they'd made little progress, or how Silas and his crew had disappeared off the Castor maps, or how Dachana's family were no closer to undoing the transfusion or confusion of powers than they ever had been. Ethan didn't mention it either.
The reunion between friends was interrupted as glasses clinked, and Ethan looked to see his father out in the yard holding up a lemonade. "Can I get your attention, everyone? I just wanted to make a toast on this special night." Mitchell Waite took a smiling Lillian English by the hand. "To a very special someone." The crowd began to applaud. Ethan found he was holding his breath, even if he couldn't have said why. "Someone who has changed my life in ways I could never have imagined it changing," Mitchell continued. He was momentarily interrupted, however, as a ripping sound echoed across the clouds. "Hold up," Link said, under his breath, grabbing Ethan by the shoulder. The sound was familiar to anyone who had ever known an incubus. It was a rip.
Ethan was sure of it. The sound of the peculiar way an incubus tore a hole open in the universe to travel through space and time, warp speed style. It was almost never a good sound, unless it belonged to Link, who was still so terrible at traveling incubus style that the sound of his rip was usually followed by an even louder howl as he landed in a dumpster or a tree. Mitchell looked skyward and smiled, raising his glass higher. "There goes that wedding flyover I ordered." Everyone laughed and applauded again. "You thinkin' what I'm thinkin'?" Ethan asked in a low voice, looking from Link to Lena. "That's no plane," Lena said quietly. "Someone I may not have found until now, but whom I will love until the day I die," Mitchell said, bringing Lillian's hand to his lips and kissing it. Now a motorcycle revved in the distance. John looked up. "Here? Now?" Lena stood up on the porch. Liv pulled a pen out of her bag and held it up like a weapon. She took a deep breath. Mitchell was still raising his glass, oblivious. "Someone who makes my life a surprise again. Someone who makes me feel young and dangerous." The backyard gate banged open and then shattered into what looked like so many matchsticks, and a massive Harley came flying through. "Holy crap!" Ethan shouted in spite of himself as his father dropped his lemonade in the grass. Mrs. English shrieked. Lena was already on the move, Liv and John not far behind her. Link seemed frozen in place. Ridley Duchesne's, in her favorite red leather jumpsuit, tore off her helmet. Her pink and blonde striped hair went cascading down over her shoulders. Of course, I should have known. As she slid out from behind a guy in a black leather jacket, presumably the Darkcaster boyfriend she'd taken with her to Los Angeles, Knox Gates, all Ethan could focus on were her iridescent violet eyes. Lena's cousin was high as a kite, but not on any kind of mortal drug. Her eyes were always the tell. The violet color wasn't something you'd find in the mortal or even the supernatural world. It was the incontrovertible sign of Ridley, the power addict, the caster Frankenstein. The former siren, who had been briefly mortal, was now the product of multiple transfusions of more caster blood than anyone in 2 universes. How much she had and what she could do, only Silas Ravenwood knew. Ethan stole a glance at Lena, who had been through so much with her cousin they might as well be sisters. As he expected, she looked more stricken than anyone. "Oopsie," Rid said to the stunned crowd. She laughed, stepping down onto the cracked driveway pavement with a flourish. The scent of smoke and motor oil curled around her like her own personal toxic atmosphere. "Might have overshot that one by a smidge." Ridley crossed the lawn to shove her gleaming red helmet into Mitchell Waite's frozen arms. "My bad, Daddy-o." Knox shut down the engine, pulling off his black helmet. He tossed it onto the grass with a shrug. "It happens. We were close." Mitchell just cleared his throat. "Well, don't you look like a kitty cat in the panty drawer?" Rid leaned in to kiss Mrs. English on the cheek, leaving a smear of bright red lipstick on the peach Maybelline foundation. "Brides are yummy." Mrs. English said nothing, but her eyes welled with tears. As they watched, not one of the 100 Gatlin mortals crammed into the yard at Waite's Landing found they could utter a word. And it wasn't even any kind of supernatural cast that had shut them up. It was the power of plain old shock. "Now then, losers," Ridley said, making her way through the sea of card tables. She pulled out a cherry lollipop and began to unwrap it. "Let's get this dog of a party started." But before Rid could get it to her mouth, Link grabbed her and hoisted her over his massive shoulders, carrying her up the steps of the back porch as she kicked him with her platform boots. Just like the old days. "Let's," Ethan said, holding open the screen door.
A friends and family council. Unacceptable, Marian barked. Completely unacceptable. She stood alongside Grandma and Aunt Dell in the kitchen of Waits Landing, looking like the three fates of Gatlin County, or maybe the Furies. Whichever ones are more powerful and more dangerous to tick off, Ethan thought. The rest of the awkward friends and family council, Link, Liv, John, Lena, and Ethan, surrounded Ridley at the table. Knox paced behind her like some kind of incubus guard dog. Marian folded her arms in front of her in her most irritated librarian pose. Even for you, Ridley, try to show a little respect. It's true, Grandma nodded firmly. Right or wrong, you have no business being here, child. Not at the moment. You're out of sorts, which makes you more dangerous than you know. Aunt Dell sighed. It's not your fault, darling. It's just, this is a very mortal wedding. It's not for you. Not when you're all like this. Why is this all sounding so familiar? Ridley cocked her head. Is it just because you've been saying it my entire life? This isn't about you, Ridley. This isn't even about the casters. This weekend is about Ethan's family, and they've been through enough already. I'm not letting anyone ruin this too. Marian took a step closer to the siren, though Ethan wasn't sure what she thought she was going to be able to do to the tragically twisted creature Ridley had become at the hands of Silas Ravenwood. Whatever she was now, it was nothing less than a modern caster tragedy. And a really annoying one, Ethan thought. Don't be such a stiff, Mar. Ridley kicked her boots up onto the Waits' ancient kitchen table, the one Amma had scrubbed within an inch of its life, day in and out. The moment Rid's boots hit the wood, lightning struck the tree outside the kitchen window, right where Amma used to hang her old spirit bottles for protection, and the windows rattled. The rain began to pour. Ethan smiled to himself. Nobody messed with Amma's kitchen, not even now. Calm down. Ridley begrudgingly put her feet back on the floor. You people really should learn how to take a joke. She raised her voice. All of you. Thunder rumbled overhead. Whatever. Rid rolled her eyes. That was pretty incredible, Liv said, scribbling in her notebook from across the table as the thunder abated. Interdimensional connectivity between this reality and the other world. Oh, please, Grandma snorted. After sass like that, I'd say Amma was showing some restraint. Aunt Dell sighed. Ridley's just testing the boundaries. They say she'll grow out of it. Then Dell looked hazy. Or maybe she did grow out of it. She was a little fuzzy on the befores and afters, like most palimpsests who saw time not so much as a flowing river as one great big puddle. Or something. Marian didn't say a word, but she didn't take her eyes off Ridley either. Still, Liv said, she shook her head and kept on writing. Otherworld causality provoking elemental response. She could never help but be excited about witnessing the intricacies of the caster world, even when she was in the middle of certain doom. Ethan had always liked that about her. The patter of rain against the roof grew louder now. The pie, Link said, standing straight up from his chair at the table. The rain. Forget the other world. Think about the other pies. Ethan shook his head. Link stuck his head out the screen door. It's raining. Save the dessert buffet, people. The outburst surprised exactly no one, considering how many song lyrics Link had written about food, from pie to all forms of barbecue in his short but storied career. Lena rapped on the glass with one knuckle, and the rain instantly stopped. There. Can we try to stay focused? Yeah, we have toasts to get back to, with, the invited guests, John said. I was invited. Ridley scowled, unwrapping another cherry lollipop. Liv yanked it out of her hand and passed it to John, who dropped it on the floor and ground it to powder beneath his boot. Very mature, Ridley said. Like she said, we were invited, Knox said, standing uncomfortably in the doorway. It happens. We were close. Mitchell just cleared his throat. Well, don't you look like a kitty cat in the panty drawer? Rid leaned in to kiss Mrs. English on the cheek, leaving a smear of bright red lipstick on the peach Maybelline foundation. Brides are yummy. Mrs. English said nothing, but her eyes welled with tears. As they watched, not one of the 100 Gatlin mortals crammed into the yard at Waits Landing found they could utter a word. And it wasn't even any kind of supernatural cast that had shut them up. It was the power of plain old shock. Now then, losers, Ridley said, making her way through the sea of card tables. She pulled out a cherry lollipop and began to unwrap it. Liv yanked it out of her hand and passed it to John, who dropped it on the floor and ground it to powder beneath his boot. Very mature, Ridley said. Like she said, we were invited, Knox said, standing uncomfortably in the doorway.
You actually weren't invited to drive your motorcycle through the fence I had to paint all last week, Ethan said, feeling less and less sorry for Rid and Knox by the minute. That was a miscalculation, Knox said, looking embarrassed. Besides, I'm not the one who was ripping. Don't look at me. Thanks, Ridley said, glaring. Wait a minute, Link said, sounding incredulous. You mean to tell me you can rip now? Nobody else seemed to have picked up on it, but there it was, right in front of them. Whatever had been done to her, Ridley had some kind of incubus blood now. Rid shrugged. I can hold my own. Knox looked away. It took a moment for the news to sink in. If she can rip, it means Silas has been experimenting with incubus blood again, John said, and we all know how well that worked out for me. It also means Silas has been experimenting with Ridley's blood again, Liv pointed out, and we all know how well that worked out for her. And what else can she do? What has Silas done to her out there in California? Ethan shuddered. Which means she's still thick as thieves with Silas, Ethan said, looking at Lena. Link nodded. And so this whole little reunion we're enjoying is probably a trap. She's probably leading him straight to us. God, paranoid much? Ridley looked at Link, annoyed. Are you finished, Sherlock? Lena began. I think what everyone is trying to say is, oh my God, do Shortstraw and his sidekicks actually need you to translate for them now? Rid clicked her tongue against her teeth. Because I can speak, stupid. Yeah, you're fluent, all right, Link snorted. Better be. I learned it from you, babe, she shot right back. Ridley, Liv said, looking up from her notebook. Let Lena finish. Why? So I can hear things I don't care about and people who don't matter? Ridley sighed loudly. Yes, now shut your trap and let everyone talk, Link said forcefully. I know you're not right in the head, but these are your friends, dumb bucket. They care about you no matter what you say about them. Them? She snorted. Are you sure that's what you mean, Shrinky Dink? He turned red. We all care, you little idiot. She glared at him. I'm sorry, could you step back? The mortal stench is really starting to get to me. I don't smell. Link was even redder now. The one who denied it supplied it, Rid said. As she spoke, she held out her hand, and the pile of ground sugar powder and the white paper stem, the remnants of the lollipop John had crushed beneath his bootstream, streamed back up through the air to her fingers, reforming again into the cherry lollipop it once was. She popped it into her mouth. Now, where were we? Everyone stared. That was new. Ethan could feel the familiar tug of Rid's persuasion, but like the rest of the people in the kitchen, he had long ago learned to ignore it, barring her more extreme displays. It was like having a mosquito bite you knew better than to scratch, because it was just going to get bigger and bigger if you did. And everyone who lived in Gatlin knew how to power through a mosquito bite or two, no matter how annoying they could be. Especially this one. Amazing, Liv said, scribbling. Evolving abilities. Lena stared at her cousin. The rest of you can go back to the party. I'll handle this. Really? You're going to handle me? Ridley laughed. First, you're going to put everything back the way you found it. That gate, the fence, the party. Everything. What? Grandma nodded approvingly. That's right. We clean up after ourselves, like your mother and I always taught you. Of course. Do that. Aunt Dell looked relieved. You're done playing with the mortals. Now clean up. Marion harumphed. Fine, Ridley said, sucking on her lollipop. Ethan felt a wave of energy pass through the kitchen walls, radiating out into the yard surrounding the house. They now think they've seen a slightly sleazy singing telegram involving a biker chick in red leather and a hot dude on a Harley. She shrugged. They'll probably be talking about that longer than they would have the actual rip, just so you know. Knox sighed. Great. And the fence? Ethan looked out the window. The fence and the gate were perfectly restored, only they were bright red. Seriously? Ugh, Ridley said, sticking her lollipop back into her mouth. How can you live like this? Ethan looked again, and now the wood was white. That's more like it. Don't mention it. Rid waved him off. Lena was relieved. Now I'll take Rid to see Macon. He's going to want to talk to her anyways. She glared at her cousin.
Didn't you know we've been looking for you for months now? Rid sighed. I heard. I just didn't care. I've been busy. I know, we all know. 3 million followers, John interrupted. Almost 4 now, Rid said. Ridley, Knox said, giving her a strange look. Let's go tell Uncle Macon all about what you've been up to, Lena said soothingly. Tell them, Knox said, looking at Ridley, why we came. You've messed with them enough. Rude, 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 Ridley said. Nobody ever appreciated me in Gatdong. Don't you start hassling me, Knox. She stood up and pulled open the refrigerator. Also, this food sucks. Things have really gone downhill since... No. Ethan slammed the door before she could finish. The chocolate milk Rid was holding dropped to the floor and exploded across the wood. Whoa, psycho. Rid looked at Ethan in disbelief. I was going to say, since I left. Sure you were, he said. She wagged her lollipop at him. I'm not sure who you mistake me for, but I'm not Team Silas, little mortal. You do know that, right? We don't know who or what you are anymore, Rid, Ethan answered, looking her in the eye. If I wasn't on your side, would we have come all this way to warn you that Silas is coming to crash your wedding? Ridley was suddenly serious. What? Lena looked startled. What are you saying, child? Grandma was pale. Aunt Dell grabbed the edge of the counter, but Marian's expression was unreadable. Rid shrugged. Or would I have bothered to tell you that Uncle Macon's stupid little bindings to protect this dung heap aren't holding? That's impossible, Liv said, putting down her pen. Those bindings are some of his finest work. I watched him put them in place myself. Rid ignored her. Or would I have mentioned that an incubus takedown of epic proportion is headed your way, all thanks to your not-quite incubus friend Wesley Lincoln? She wiped chocolate milk off her hands and onto her pants. Abraham Ravenwood ought what's coming to him, Link said defensively. You don't have to tell me that. I don't care, Ridley said. Not about you or them or any of it. But the Ravenwood side of my family might feel a little differently. What do you think, cuz? Grammograms? Mom? The air in the kitchen had gone ice cold, which Ethan knew was a reflection of how Lena was feeling. We need Macon. Now. Lena grabbed Link and Ethan by the hands. Let's take the short way. John grabbed Liv and Marian. Knox grabbed Ridley, but Grandma grabbed her other arm just as quickly. Not so fast, Grandma said. I'm sticking with you, darling. Ridley looked surprised. Then, the universe ripped open, and the kitchen was left with only rattling windows and a spreading puddle of chocolate milk. Down the aisle. Are you absolutely certain of what you heard? Macon paced in front of the great fireplace that occupied one side of his study in the Castor tunnels. Ethan thought of it as his lair, really. Lena's grandmother had vanished with Dell and Liv and Marian into the Lune Libri as soon as they'd all appeared in the tunnels. The bindings of protection had to hold, and Ethan knew they'd search every cast in the stacks before they gave up looking for something that would keep the perimeter of Gatlin, or at least the grounds of Ravenwood, and the wedding safe. Left on their own, Ethan and the others had gone to deliver Knox and Ridley to Macon, who could be found, like always, enjoying the cavernous darkness of his chambers beneath Ravenwood Manor and the company of his enormous wolf of a dog, Boo Roudray.
Macon looked unsettled to see Ridley in her current violet-eyed haze, even though Lena had been warning him of her altered personality for months now. Macon said little as he listened, which was strange to Ethan, that the answers to the current situation escaped even the larger-than-life Lord of Ravenwood Manor. Silas is coming, Knox repeated. He looked exhausted. That's what we heard. He wants Link. He knows about the wedding. He wants payback, to avenge Abraham Ravenwood's death, and yeah, probably to flatten this whole town. What does that even mean? Because, no offense, but Gatlin's been flattened a few times before, Ethan said. Well, not flattened. There was that one plague, Link said. All those lubbers. And the drought, John pointed out. Don't forget all those coffins that came back up from his garden of perpetual peace like a bad cheesesteak. Link nodded. That was pretty rank. And Seraphine, Ethan said, the night of Lena's claiming. Macon winced at the mention of it. The old battle at Honey Hill, Link sighed. That was a trippy night at Greenbrier. Before my time, John said. But I caught a good fire or two. Ethan's right. If someone thinks they're actually going to take down Gatlin, good luck.
Link glared at Knox. This town's seen plenty of action. Knox leaned closer, and Ethan could see even now how much the two supernaturals hated each other. I'm just here to deliver the message. You might want to pull out your little scissors again. Get it? He's coming for you. Link practically growled. Knox's eyes were dark. Silas and his blood incubus thugs are definitely picking up where Abraham left off. Definitely, Ridley said. She looked uncomfortable. Ethan understood. She hadn't been home for a long time, and she wasn't about to start bonding with her family now. Knox looked at her. There, we said we'd tell them. Now we've told them. Let's get out of here. Hello? Do I look like I want to be here? Ridley sighed from where she was flopped on a brocade-covered chair. Wait for it, Ridley, Uncle Macon warned. You're not going anywhere until we finish this conversation. Boom, she pointed at him. And there you go, like clockwork. That's it? That's all you can remember? Are you certain it's absolutely everything? Macon asked. Of course. Ridley sat up. Her hair was tousled and she looked tired. Silas isn't my BFF, Uncle Macon. He's not a big sharer. We ran in some common circles and I heard what I heard. Yeah? That doesn't sound suspicious, Link said, looking at Ethan. Why would we risk our own destruction just to screw with you? Knox sounded incredulously. Link shrugged. It happens. Only to morons like you, Ridley said. Takes one to know one, Link said. Guys, John said. Link, Ridley, everyone looked at him, almost startled, as if they had forgotten he was in the room. Okay, Ridley sighed. It's not that complex. Silas isn't interested in lying low anymore. He's got a new strategy. Think of it as the less the merrier. And bonus, while he's taking out Link, he's also getting to test his hybrid caster creations. Uncle Macon stood at the fireplace grating, looking into the flames. And the stronger those hybrids get, the more easily he'll eventually get what he wants. Which is, Ethan asked. The end of humanity, Macon said. Bingo, Ridley said. So why did you come back? Link said, looking at Ridley. Maybe I thought I owed you that. The words sounded more like a question than anything else. We don't know what his creatures are capable of, so we can't plan for how Silas will attack. Grandma leaned heavily on a stone table in the center of the Lunae Libre. The table was stacked high with books and scrolls and chests containing more of the same. Liv had disappeared with Marion into the deeper recesses of the library. Yeah, it's not just Link they want, not anymore. Ethan frowned. Lena shook her head. Silas isn't stupid. He's seen how close we are. He knows he could attack any one of us, and it would still be hurting Link. Whatever he tries, we need to be prepared to stop him, Macon said. The Duke and Niece women went into full operation mode. Lena was translating Latin and Greek scrolls off the shelves as quickly as she could unroll them. Aunt Dell was up to her ears in ancient parchment casts. Grandma was sorting through a chest of even more ancient carved stone fragments, looking for anything that would keep Silas away, which, so far, was nothing. Macon leafed through his 10th book in as many minutes. We can't try to protect the entire town. If he's planning to strike the wedding, we're going to have to focus on key targets. Marion appeared in the doorway with an armful of books, angled carefully so as to touch only her gloved fingers. What are you saying? Listen to yourself. Key targets? Do you mean like Stonewall Jackson High and my library? The churches and the DAR? All those places are full of innocent people. Not quite all of them. We can let him have the DAR, Macon said, turning the pages of another book. It was his longest-running joke. Liv appeared behind Marion, also in white-gloved hands, holding even more books and scrolls. For God's sake, Macon, they're mortals. They're just people. They have no idea that any of this is about to happen. They think this weekend is a celebration. We all knew the risks. Something like this was bound to happen eventually. But not to so many innocent people, Liv said, shaking her head. It's our watch, Macon. This is on us. Marion was insistent. No, Link said, standing at the perimeter of the library stacks. It's on me. I took out Abraham. This is my problem. Don't be ridiculous. Any one of us would have done exactly what you did. In fact, if you recall, ridding the earth of Abraham Ravenwood was exactly what we'd gone to the graveyard to do, Macon said. It's true, Ethan said. But you didn't do it. I did. And that's something I'll have to live with for the rest of my life. I don't have to tell you how long that could be. Or how short, Macon added dryly. Either way, it's my rock and I'll carry it, even if it's a freaking boulder. Of course, Lena said, looking at Link as if he'd just said something genius. Your rock, the one you carry? That gives me an idea. Yeah? That's a coincidence, because it gives me 0 ideas, Link said. Lena held up her hand, staring at the ring on her finger. It was the one they had all gotten last year, before they'd left Gatlin for New York and Massachusetts and the UK. Ethan held out his. Then Liv followed, then John, then Link, who looked at the others and said, "Can someone tell me why we're doing this?" Lena smiled. "We're bound to one another, right? You carry us around with you wherever you go. We're your burden, your friends, the people you care about. We're the rock." Yeah, right. No, I don't get it. Link sighed. Lena's mind was racing. Ethan could practically see her brain pulsing behind her eyes. What happens when you carry a rock around with you all the time? Link frowned. Seriously? I wasn't really talking about, a real rock. It was like a figure of speech, a metaphor or a smiley or something. Lena nodded. Simile, not smiley. And that was so disturbing, we're never going to speak of it again. Right, Link said. I still don't get it. You get really strong, Ethan said, suddenly. That's what happens when you carry a boulder around all the time. Exactly, Liv said. Only when those friends happen to be casters, it's not your arms that get really strong, Lena continued. It's the bond, Lena agreed. And more than that, Lena said. It's your powers? Ethan looked confused. And? Lena asked. Nobody knew what she was saying now. She gave up. And their powers. Silas might have crossbred the strongest hybrid casters and incubuses in 2 universes. But you're forgetting this. So have we. You think the fact that we're friends is going to save us from Silas? Ethan asked. Blood may be thicker than water, but what's thicker than blood? Lena pressed on. I have no idea, Link answered, scratching his head. Well, plasma, if you want to get ketwickle, Liv said.
But that would depend on the relative platelet counts. More blood, Lena said, thicker blood. We're going to fight Silas hybrids with hybrids of our own. And who would those hybrids be? Liv frowned. Us. Macon raised an eyebrow. Lena began searching the shelves for another book. A Circle of Protection. Here, Marion said, moving toward the shelves. In the back. That's some very old magic. Lena followed her, eyes blazing. Maybe we can't bind Ravenwood to keep it safe. Maybe we're the binding. All we can do is what we've already done, bind ourselves to one another. And the rest of Gatlin? Ethan asked. Lena looked back at him over her shoulder. We keep them in the circle, our circle. Link frowned. So what? We make a kumbaya circle all around the edge of town? Something like that, Lena said. Liv chewed on her pen thoughtfully. Maybe something exactly like that. With this ring. It should be around here somewhere, Ethan said. He pushed through the palmetto and swamp grass surrounding Waders Creek. Link followed close behind him. I can't believe how much the old path has grown over. Everyone else was still with Macon in the caster tunnels, preparing for tomorrow. Ethan had one thing he felt like he had to do before then, and Link had offered to come with him. Ethan hadn't complained. Having a quarter incubus around never hurt anyone, not when it came to the muscle department, especially not when you're facing Silas Ravenwood around every corner and within every shadow. The path? Link tried to find it, but he couldn't either, not even with his radically improved incubus senses. I guess nobody uses it anymore. He grinned. Remember the fort we built out here? The 200 bug bites on each leg? The ones we had to smother with clear nail polish? Ethan sighed. How could I forget? I burned mine off with a lighter. Link shrugged. That explains so much about you. Link grinned, and the two of them kept going. There used to be a whole community out here, remember? It was practically a town. Ethan shook his head. Link looked around at the desolate swamp. If it was, it isn't now.
It's nothing. There was no community without Amma. She was gone, and she'd taken it with her. She had been the heart and soul of everyone and everything she'd surrounded herself with. But she had vanished because of Ethan, and the rest of Waders Creek just seemed to have picked up and vanished right along with her. It isn't fair, Ethan frowned. I think this one was hers. They were standing in front of a ramshackle house. Amma's place? You better be sure. We only bought one cake. I'm sure. I've been here hundreds of times, maybe thousands. Her house? This was her porch. That one, the yellow one. I'm sure that's the one. Link looked at the half-destroyed house skeptically. But are you sure this will work? Do you have a better idea? Nope. There was nothing more to say. Ethan knelt down. He opened his backpack and pulled out half a tunnel of fudge cake. They'd lifted it when they'd taken off from the rehearsal dinner, which Ethan knew would still be going on even now. It didn't matter. Ethan had to get to the bottom of whatever was going on. It was as much for his father as anyone else. He considered the cake. It had turned into a brown orb the size of a slightly squished football, but Ethan knew it didn't matter. It wasn't about the cake. It was about the things that he'd felt when he was making it, the things he'd remembered about her, the things he'd missed about her. Even though it wasn't her favorite, it was his. He'd made it because he knew if she had been there for his father's wedding, she would have made it for him. To say, "You'll be okay, Ethan Waite. You'll keep going right on through this tunnel and find your way out the other side. The only way out is through. The right thing and the easy thing are never the same. She's not your mother, but she doesn't have to be. She's your family now because she loves someone you love." Link stood over him now like a giant tree. You want me to, do something? Is this like a three-way phone call or something? I'm not exactly sure. Just stay back for a minute. Ethan closed his eyes. Help me. I need help. Is it working? Link sounded anxious. Ethan opened one eye. Could you shut up? He tried again. Amma, I need your guidance. We can't do this alone. I know we've come to you before, and I know you probably have a whole lot of things you'd rather be thinking about right now than this. Believe me, so do I. Ethan waited. Then he tried again. Mom, I don't know where else to go. If any of you greats are out there, Uncle Abner, I don't have any wild turkey on me. I know that's your favorite, but I bet you'd like this cake if you gave it a shot. Aunt Prue, I know you've probably got your hands full keeping an eye on Mercy and Grace, but still. He heard a rustling sound in the tall grasses around him, and when he opened his eyes, he almost jumped out of his skin. It wasn't Amma, or his mother, or even Uncle Abner or Aunt Prue who appeared before him. It was the bride. So that was weird. Ethan stood up, looking as confused as he felt. Excuse me? Mrs. English, aren't you supposed to be at the rehearsal dinner right now? Ethan. One word. That was all it took for Ethan to know exactly what was going on. What's happening? Link's voice sounded like it was coming from far away, but Lillian English's was coming from someplace even farther. When Ethan looked around, he couldn't see Link anymore, as if he was in the swamp, but not in the swamp, dislocated from any one particular place or time. It's you, Ethan said. He knew the voice. He'd never be able to forget it, even if he hadn't heard it in a long time now. The being in front of him wasn't his old English teacher. It only spoke through her. She might as well have been a cell phone. In fact, this wasn't Lillian English at all. It was her infamous alter ego, the Lilum, a powerful ancient demon, the one who had almost destroyed the world when Lena had claimed herself for both light and dark and ruptured the whole order of things. I wasn't expecting you to hear me, Ethan said. The creature who was not Lillian English stared at him blankly. When she spoke, her mouth never moved. It was like Celting, only somehow not at all. Ethan still spoke out loud. He didn't want to even try to get inside a demon's head. I have watched you since we first met. You were brave. I was surprised. Thank you, I guess? Ethan didn't know what to say exactly. You worry about your friend now. That's right. You want to keep him from the pain you experienced. I hadn't thought about it like that. It certainly wasn't an experience Ethan would have wished on anyone, especially not his best friend. You will do what you always do. You will fight. What if something goes wrong? If your friend is to die, then your friend is to die. All men die. You too will die again, someday. It is the mortal way. That, Ethan said, is the world's losiest pep talk. The creature stepped forward and touched his hand, lifting it to his face. He could see the binding ring on his finger right in front of him. Build the circle, but when the time comes, give me the ring. You mean you or Mrs. English? Yes, the mortal. So, Mrs. English. Yes, you must give her the ring. It is hers to take and yours to lose. The ring will do what it must. You don't need to be afraid. She moved her hand to his shoulder. He could barely feel the pressure of her cool touch. Every battle you have fought is with you still. Every enemy you have defeated stands behind you. You are bound, as you have always been bound, to those who came before and those who will come after, to those you loved and those you hated. You are stronger than you think. He hoped she was right. The vow. The wedding day unfolded like any other. The sky was blue. The day was warm. There were birds where there were supposed to be birds, making the noises birds were supposed to make. The string quartet had showed up with only 3 people, so it was now a string trio.
One surreptitious wave of Lena's hand, and they had never sounded so good, even without a cello. The morning went off without a hitch, or at least without any supernatural ones. The site where Mitchell and Lillian were to be married was really just the meadow at Greenbrier, where the Duchesnes family had been buried for generations. It was as much a park as it was a memorial site, and the wildflowers made it one of the most beautiful places of all the Ravenwood properties. But where days before there had been nothing, now there was almost a cathedral made entirely of tree branches and wild grasses and wildflowers, blossoms and sunlight and boughs of white birch. Everything looked like it had been shot through a hazy golden filter. Lena's grandmother and Marion had outdone themselves. Ethan didn't know if it was magic or just incredibly good gardening. Lena's family and Marion's family were known for both, in different circles. All Ethan knew was that the bride's gown looked like it was made of snowflakes and sunshine, as goofy as that sounded. Lillian English was radiant, and his father looked like he was going to throw up, which seemed about right, too. This wasn't just a Southern wedding, but a Southern caster wedding, which meant, as Link said, double the frosting and 3 times the bacon. Gatlin's favorite pastime, pulling out all the stops. That was what Ethan's mom would have said about a day like this one, full stop. Nothing about the day would be small, not even if an army of blood incubus super soldiers, that was how Ethan thought of them, was trying to kill Ethan's best friend, or maybe all of them along the way. And that was how the day continued, not small. The wedding processional was practically a parade. That was Gatlin's own little twist on the formalities of a Southern wedding. You lined up every kid you could find, decorated them with some form of flowers and netting, jammed their hands into sweaty white gloves, and sent them marching down the aisle ahead of the bride and groom. That part was fine. The terrifying part had come before, when Ethan was waiting for his dad to take his place beneath the makeshift bower of branches that was the church at Greenbrier. Ethan and his father had been standing off to the side, behind the crypt. "Are you sure you want to do this, Dad?" Ethan heard himself say the words, and for a moment it was like another person was saying them. Still, he had to ask. It was the question he'd been wondering for months now. His dad straightened his tie. "Let's see. 12 across. SURTUDINOU. Really? Suritudinous? Is that the best you can do?" "Yeah, well, you can't blame a guy for trying. And I always was terrible at crossword puzzles." Mitchell sighed. Then he looked at his son. "You know this isn't going to change anything between the 2 of us, right?" "I know," Ethan said. "And you know I love you, right?" "I do," Ethan said. Mitchell nodded. "Well then, I guess that covers it. Let's go do this thing." "Dad, I don't think Mom minds." "What? She'd want you to be happy." Mitchell stared at his son for a good long time before he spoke.
Your mom loved us both, Ethan, but she never belonged to either one of us. A person like your mom, she just didn't belong to people. He shook his head. All the same, I wish she could see you now, what you're like, who you grew up to be. She'd be so proud. Ethan didn't know what he could say. He only knew he couldn't say the truth. What he knew about his mother, how she'd really died, who she'd really loved, when he'd last seen her. I believe, Ethan said slowly, that you two were meant to have what you had. You were meant to find each other, and you were meant to have me as your son. Of course we were. It was fate. Ethan shook his head. I don't want to think about it like that. Not anymore. He tried to find the words that came next, but it was hard. Maybe you were meant to have her, but you were also meant to let her go. Mitchell nodded. All anyone wants is for you to be happy, Dad. Even me. I'm glad you found someone you care about. I'm sorry if I ever made it seem like anything else. His father hugged him. It was all either one of them needed to say. The meadow was full of white wooden chairs that miraculously held everyone who had ever loved Ethan and his dad. Almost everyone. Ethan stood next to his father and the Reverend, under a cascade of flowering branches. Fog now floated in the grassy field, blowing into the clearing with the arrival of every new guest, just gradually enough so that the mortals could think it was natural. It never dissolved, though, and Ethan knew it was far from accidental. The same way he knew the incubuses were there, in the woods surrounding the meadow. The fog was their doing. It was meant for cover. Silas, Ethan thought. They're here, he kelted. Lena looked up from the back row of the chairs. Ethan felt the prick of his hairs standing up, goosebumps spreading across every inch of his bare skin. They were here. He felt them in the birds abandoning the trees, the clouds rolling across the sun, the insects stopping their buzzy noise. Do you feel that, Elle? Of course I do, Ethan. Link looked around, spooked. Then John. Liv watched them both, her hand on her pen. It was in the air around them, the presence of Silas, of his twisted shadow creatures, of something that seemed like almost pure evil, Ethan thought. We can't stop it, Elle. We just can't let him hurt anyone. She nodded at him from the other side of the clearing. Then she looked worriedly at the sea of Gatlin folks between them, even Ethan's own father, who didn't seem to notice a thing aside from the face of his bride. We won't, Lena kelted. I swear it on my own father's grave, Ethan. Dearly beloved, the Reverend began. He stumbled, shuffling the note cards in his hands, but the gray-white fog was turning darker, and it was becoming difficult to see. Come on, Ethan thought. The fog was so thick now, it was getting hard to make out Lena's face where she stood. The Reverend finally sighed, gave up on the cards, and smiled out at the crowd. This is the part where I do my song and dance about the bonds of holy matrimony and the importance of commitment, folks. The crowd laughed, and even Mitchell and Lillian smiled. Speed it up, Reverend. Ethan shook his head. About friends and family and the power of the standing up for the people you love in this crazy world we live in. Thing is, I've known Mitchell Waite all my life, and so I also know he could give that lecture himself. So let's get on with it, Ethan thought. Or maybe kelted, because almost instantly he saw the casting breeze curling through the silhouette of Lena's hair. She held up one hand and her fingers began to flutter. So let's get on with it, the Reverend said, quickly. Ethan felt a burst of relief, and Lena's reassuring warmth at the edge of his conscious mind. The Reverend kept going. We're here to witness the sacred bond of this man and this woman in the eyes of their community. Even the good Lord knows Gatlin has eyes, Mitchell added dryly. More laughter. Zip it, Dad. Ethan watched as the shadows now loomed higher than trees, in the eyes of their family and those who love them, and the eyes of God. Ethan watched his father as he spoke the words that would bind him to Lillian English. He would love her and respect her and remember her and honor her. Moments later, she was doing the same. She held out her hand. Mitchell fumbled in his pocket. Finally, Ethan stepped forward, pulling the ring from inside his own jacket. I've got it, Dad. Mitchell took it, looking relieved. He was so relieved, in fact, that he didn't notice it wasn't the wedding band he'd picked out on King Street in Charleston. It was Ethan's own binding ring, the one he had worn on his own hand for more than a year now.
A tidal surge of ink-black night pulled toward Mitchell Waite from all sides as he slid it onto Lillian's ring finger. It hit Ethan with such force, it almost knocked the wind out of him. Lillian's ring pulsed with light, almost as if it had caught fire, and time froze. Everything stopped. The Gatlin folks in their folding chairs might as well have been cardboard cutouts, and the Reverend himself could have been one of those wax museum dummies. The only thing that moved in the darkness was light. 4 pulsing points of light, shining as brightly as the one that had erupted from Lillian English's hand. First Lena, then Link, then John, and Liv. One by one, the rings on each of his friends' fingers began to glow with a strange light. Only Ridley sat in the shadows next to Knox, unbound by her own choice. She watched the others as if from a great distance, looking as amazed as Ethan felt. The binding rings, he thought. They're working. At least they're doing something. Lillian's ring now burned so brightly that the light made one bright sunspot out of both her and Mitchell's hands. Ethan could feel Lena's surprise in the back of his mind. No one had known exactly what to expect, but as luminous rays and ropes of light unfurled in an interconnected web between each of the binding rings, Ethan knew it would have been impossible to imagine this. He longed to be a part of it, but the more he watched the energy spread across the field, the harder the dark wave pressed against him. Ethan gasped for breath. He didn't know how much longer he could stay on his feet. He felt like his chest was going to collapse from the pressure and the pain. "What's happening, Ethan?" Lena's voice appeared in his mind, rolling toward him if from far away. "They're here, Lee." Ethan forced himself to celt the words. They might as well have been written on his brain with fire, but he kept going. "It's Silas and his soldiers." He could feel Lena recoil. "Ethan!" He staggered to stay on his feet. As he did, he felt her warmth spreading through his mind. "I'm okay, Lee." Ethan tried to focus through the pain. He could see the building darkness pushing in on the bright web of light from every side. Shadowy creatures, faces and figures, made only of darkness and hate and spite, crawled up from the dirt and sunk down through the thickly fogged air. "They're horrible," Lena shouted in his mind. "I can feel them all, Ethan, even just from my connection to you. We have to finish this. You won't be able to keep this up." Ethan nodded, even though she couldn't see him. He was almost too exhausted to think. "It's time for the Battle of Honey Hill, Lee, the real one." Ethan could no longer see Lena across the clearing, only the bright ball of light, binding light, he guessed, that now occupied the place where she had stood. He pulled himself straight, peering into the shadow world that now surrounded him. "Bring it, Silas." He took a deep breath. "It's time." Ethan kept his eyes fixed on the Greenbrier crypt in the distant shadows, beyond his friend's dazzling light, where so much had happened on the night of Lena's claiming. He watched as the 5 bright bursts of light, his friends, the people he trusted most in the world, now even with the life of his own father, moved into position. Only, they weren't just his friends anymore. They were a constellation, a universe. The light made trails as it moved through the shadow. It was almost exactly like watching shooting stars pulse across the sky, and the thought was comforting. It reminded Ethan of nights on the back porch, with his family and Lena, and even Liv as they'd tracked the caster's southern star. Yes, just like that. Let the light help you, Ethan. The circle of protection is greater than itself. For a moment, Ethan thought it was Lena kelting to him, but then he recognized the voice, and it wasn't Lena's. It was the Lilum. He had to trust her. He had to believe that he could see this through. "We're all right here, Ethan." It was Lena kelting to him now. Ethan knew it was Lena who now stood facing him, at the far end of the meadow church. She stepped free from the chairs, standing tall, exploding in green and gold flames. He also could tell it was Link who took his place on Ethan's right, just as they had planned it that way. Ethan would have known it was Link even if they hadn't planned it that way, though. Link had always been his right-hand man, one way or another. It was his rightful place, where he belonged.
Link's light was cooler than Lena's, an explosion of ice and silver, like some Siren Song album cover he would have been all too proud of. Ethan sensed the pulsing ball of sunshine and fire on his left was Liv, as steady now as she had ever been as a friend. The light that had to be John moved out from behind the makeshift altar. The others lent out powers too, even if there was only one Ravenwood on the side of light. Macon rose slowly from the center of the chairs, fog swirling around him. Later, no one in Gatlin would ever recall seeing him at all. He reached his hand to touch the nearest stream of light. Grandma, who stood next to him, slowly followed. Then Dell, on his other side. Marion, in front of them all. Together, they, all of them, had formed both a circle and a circle within the circle. Shooting rays of light exploded from the circles on every side. Eternity within eternity, Ethan thought. Worlds without end. Like so many spokes on the wheel of fate. Like an old irrigation plow rolling to bring water to a dead field. Like the tires of Lila's car as they skidded off the road. All of those moments were present in this one. The past and the future were now. Now, Lee, Ethan kelted. He watched as the brilliant sphere of light that was Lena stretched into the air, pulling itself into something so much bigger than just one person could ever be. Ethan imagined her spreading her hands slowly in the air, and a delicate, luminous bubble radiated out from her until it was so large it had enveloped the entire meadow, connecting each of her friends and family one to the next. Even Knox, who sat in the front row, was now inside the protected space. Unlike the mortals, he could move. He didn't, though, not even as the sound of laughter echoed over him. A light show? Silas. Ethan knew it was his voice, even if he couldn't see him. Magic tricks? Girly soap bubbles and friendship circles? Is that the best you can do? The dark words echoed out across the clearing, and for a moment, Ethan thought the shadows themselves were speaking. Hardly a match for the brute power of the dark, isn't it? Ethan raised his voice, shouting up at the night. I don't see you penetrating this circle of protection, Silas. So yes, my friends are the best I can do. A surge of breathless black pounded Ethan, and he stumbled. He raised his face, defiant. Show your face, you coward. Careful what you wish for, boy. The dark waves pounded him again and again. Ethan's skin burned from the searing cold, the absence of life and love, of everything but hate and fear. All around him, the brilliant web of light shuddered, but held fast. Then the darkness receded and left only pain. It crept up Ethan's legs, spreading across his arms. His head pulsed, and for a moment he thought his brain itself would explode. I will not give in to it. I will not back down. He raised his voice again. Leave us alone, Silas. Leave this place and never return. This is my home, my friends and my family. This isn't about Link or Abraham or any one person, not anymore. For the last time, let it go. You have to stop. Stop? Silas laughed harder. Do you have any idea what you're trying to stop? I've got the basic idea, Ethan said, as he felt his anger rising above his pain. You're ants, you mortals, maggots and spiders. Soon you'll be trampled beneath our feet. Yeah? Then come out and show yourself, Ethan finally shouted. If you're so powerful and we're so weak, where are you? What are you hiding for, Silas? Ethan felt a cold current shudder past him. Silas' face appeared in front of him, hovering less than an inch away from his own. Who's hiding, boy? Then Ethan saw only a flash of silver, and the blade was at his throat before he could say a word. Go ahead, Ethan said, forcing himself to look at Silas. The Ravenwood's eyes were two black pools, as dark as his face was pale. Do it. I've been dead before. You can't scare me. As Ethan said the words, he realized they were true. I'm not scared. I can't be. It's up to me this time. Silas couldn't hurt any of them, or anyone at the ceremony, as long as they stayed together in the circle of protection. But that also meant they were trapped inside it. Only Ethan was outside the circle, alone in the dark.
Only Ethan could fight Silas. That was why he'd given his ring to Lillian, not just to keep Lillian and his father safe, but to keep Ethan free to fight without risking the others. He had no choice, so he looked at the web of light and began to count. "Don't move, Lee. I know you're in there. I also know you're the most powerful caster of them all. You're the air the others are breathing, the river that keeps the other fish from suffocating. No matter what happens to me, you can't break the circle. Promise me. You have to promise." He couldn't see Lena's face, but he could feel her surrounding him with light and lighting the way inside him as she spoke. "I promise, Ethan. You've defeated death itself. Come back to me from the other world. Wandered with me through the underground. No matter what happens, I know you'll always be with me, because you're my wheel of fate, and because I love you, Ethan Waite." Ethan reached his fingers out to the light in answer. "I love you too, Lee." The light washed over him with a shock of electric buzz that he only remembered from the early days before he and Lena could touch, and he smiled. Ethan took a deep breath and twisted himself in Silas' grip. "I'm not scared," he said again. Silas pressed the knife deeper into the flesh of Ethan's neck. "That's too bad. I should scare you," he said, "unless you're stupider than I realized." "Maybe I am," Ethan thought. Silas dragged his silver blade, raking it up the length of Ethan's neck. Ethan kept his eyes focused on the web of light as he felt the warm flush of blood fleeing his body. "I gave you a chance, remember that," Silas laughed. "So generous for a dead man." "You do what you gotta do," Ethan said, "and so will I." Silas ripped his blade free of Ethan's skin and raised it again. A flood of dark demons came rushing out from the blade, hurling forward in great vomiting torrents, as if every demon Silas had ever controlled was now at his command, here in the meadow at Greenbrier. The shadow world descended from Silas's blade, devouring Ethan alive. "No, no, no! I can't, it's too much." "Macken's pet. Natural will be next," Silas growled. "Then Abraham's murderous incubus." He smiled. "Then maybe your father, in exchange for mine, eh?" "No." Ethan closed his eyes. He could feel the demon creatures crawling over him now, inhabiting him, consuming him. He flashed on glimpses of them as they screamed in his mind. Leathery wings, the stench of sulfur. The air was burning. His skin was burning. Writhing snakes. The landscape became bones, became fire. The meadow became a lake full of corpses. The air was thick with buzzing lubbers. They crawled inside his mouth, choking him when he tried to scream. The trees became water towers, dropping with bodies. The ground beneath his feet became air, and he was falling, falling. "Lena! I can't! Lena!" It was her voice that finally cut through the pain. "Ethan, listen to me. You have to find the strength to fight. I'm right here. We're all okay. They can't hurt us. It's holding. Can you see? It's working. The circle within the circle, worlds without end. But you have to fight. Do you hear me? We are stronger than we think, Ethan. Stronger and better. All of us." Ethan nodded. He tried to push himself towards Silas, but his knees began to buckle. He tried to claw at the shadows, but they danced around him, fast as flame. All around him he could hear the darkness laughing. And then another voice. "Great plan, guys." Another laugh. "Someone deserves a medal, seeing as you're all stuck in your big old Dayglow hula hoop. And boyfriend here just got some super nice new air conditioning for his jugular." And with that, Ridley overtook what remained of Ethan's conscious mind. "You may be stuck, cuz, and you may be half dead again, boyfriend, but I'm not. I'm not in your stupid sharing time circle, thank God, not anymore. And you have no idea what I'm capable of." Ethan opened his eyes. Ridley raced through the dark flames that surrounded the meadow now. As she moved, the dark fire began to burn the meadow as powerfully as any mortal fire, and the sky was now filled with not just evil, but billowing black smoke.
The trees were black and scorched, and orange flame beat against the shimmering bubble of light. As Ethan struggled to stay conscious, he could also feel Lena struggling to keep the circle lit. "Ridley," Lena called, sending a blast of energy in her direction. Ethan nodded. "You can do it, Rid." As the words formed in his mind, Ethan didn't know if he was Celting or praying. He heard only a laugh in return. "Of course I can." Ridley reached Silas before he even saw her. Her hands had become blades, flaming swords, like some kind of avenging angel from a long-forgotten scroll. Her eyes blazed violet and green and gold. As she rolled into Silas, they exploded into a ball of energy and blood and light and noise. Ethan willed himself to stay conscious. He reached out in his mind to anyone who could hear. "Hold the circle. Hold." The explosion rocked the clearing. Ethan felt the ground ripping open beneath his feet. Silas was screaming, "Hold the circle." Then Ethan blacked out. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was standing behind his father in front of the rows of white chairs. "I thee wed." Lillian English smiled. Ethan looked around, surprised. The ring that sparkled on Lillian English's finger was her own, the one Mitchell Waite had picked out for her at the very start of their engagement. The binding ring was gone. That wasn't all. The dark fire was gone, just like the mortal flames. The demons had vanished. Gone were the hybrid creatures and the dark creatures and the rising shadows. There was no sign of Silas Ravenwood or his silver demon blade. Ethan reached up for his neck, feeling for blood. There was none. Ethan only saw Lena, smiling at him from across the sea of chairs. The threat was gone. This was just his father's regular old Gatlin wedding, as threatening or non-threatening as that may be. Ethan could feel it, and he exhaled in relief. The Reverend closed his book with a sly grin. "What are you waiting for? You may now kiss the bride." Mitchell leaned forward, and their kiss was the sweetest kiss two oldish people in the middle of a Castor County meadow in the aftermath of near-dark destruction probably ever had. Link couldn't have told you that, though. He was too busy kissing someone else. When he came up for air, all he could do was smile. "Sweet Redeemer, Ridley Duchanis, if I didn't love you so much, I'd hate you." She wrapped her arms around his neck. "I'd be right there with you, hot stuff." Mr. Mitchell Waite and the new Mrs. Lillian English Waite ducked their way through the birdseed and cheering and climbed into the open door of the old Ravenwood hearse, windows down. Knox Gates had offered to drive. In fact, he'd insisted on it. He couldn't wait to get out of town, and Lena's grandmother had been particularly keen on getting rid of him. She'd been keen on a few other safety measures as well. Another Castor would be waiting at the Charleston airport. Likewise, there would be someone at the Barbados house Lena's grandma had insisted on offering them, impersonating a cook. Precautions were necessary, and after today, it was impossible to think otherwise. You just couldn't have too many circles of protection when it came right down to it.
Still, it didn't make for any less happy a wedding, and at least Ethan now knew that Silas Ravenwood would be out of the picture for a good long time, if not forever. If not for a good long time. Link slid one leg over the seat of John's old Harley. "Can't believe he left this thing behind." "I can," Rid said, slipping in behind him. "Poor guy." That said, she seemed to have no problem knowing right where to put her hands. "Muscle memory," Lena Kelted. "Some things never change," Ethan Kelted back. "I'll miss you," Lena said. "We just need some time," Ridley answered her cousin. "And maybe a couple Advil," Link said, cracking a smile. "Maybe a couple hundred." He shoved one booted foot down on the gas, looking over his shoulder to Ridley. She nodded and pulled on her helmet. "See ya, losers." "See ya, cuz." Lena took a step back. "Hey," Ethan said. Link raised an eyebrow. "You watch out for yourself, will you?" "Me? You're worried about me?" He scoffed at Ethan, making a fist. "Gun show, remember?" Ethan shrugged. "Not worried. Just, I'd kinda like to have you guys in my future, you know?" "You mean like a best man?" "Shut up. Maybe. Someday." Link grinned. "Dude, don't you get it? I've been your best man all along. What makes you think I'd stop anytime soon?" Ridley's arms circled his waist as he laughed, and she leaned her head against his back. Then Ethan heard the ripping sound, and they were gone. John and Liv were the last to go, but once they had taken off for the airport, quiet descended over Ravenwood Manor like the snug lattice of a well-cut pie crust. Everyone was gone now. The sun was setting. Ethan and Lena watched it slip down behind the river, sitting with their backs against Lena's bed. Her room, which Ravenwood had itself once again turned translucent, allowed for a perfect view. "I'll miss this," Ethan said. "I know. I can't believe it's almost September. 2 down, 2 to go." Ethan counted the years that kept them apart the way he and Link used to count the days until summer. "Shut up. You love school. Not as much as I love some other things." Ethan smiled at her and fumbled in his pocket, which only reminded him of his father looking for Lillian's wedding ring hours earlier. The thought made his stomach lurch and his face turn red. All this talk about weddings. Still, he pulled something out of his pocket and pressed it into Lena's hand. A ring, engraved, a circle within a circle, coincidentally. "What is this?" She looked surprised. "It's for you. I figured, seeing as you lost one ring today." Every binding ring had been lost today, not just the one Ethan had given Lillian English. They'd simply vanished. Liv was already working out the physics of it all, and Ethan knew she'd crack it eventually. But for now, it's a mystery. "Ethan, it's beautiful." It actually wasn't. It wasn't much more than an old piece of tin, probably. "You're beautiful," he said. She really was. She smiled, examining the ring more closely. He watched her take it all in. "It was my mom's. I found it in her jewelry box last week when I was supposed to be looking for cufflinks, and I kept it out. Marion said she got it when she was admitted into the Southern Scholars Honor Society, right after she finished her PhD. "Really?" "Yeah. I know it's old, and it's not real silver, and I'm guessing it's worth about $12. Even better." She smiled, and he knew she really did think it was. "Well, it meant something to her, and she meant something to me, and I knew that would mean something to you, if that makes sense." He knew he was rambling now, but he didn't care. Perfect sense. Lena's eyes were sparkling. "I know we have a whole lot of our lives still ahead of us, so I don't want to get, creepy or anything." "So our future is creepy now?" She laughed. "You know what I mean. But the way I figure it, you're you, and I'm me, and I can't imagine ever being with anyone else." "I know." Ethan took a breath. "I tried to think about what it's like to be with you, like the words for it." "You're not going to like it. Try me." It's an honor." "A what?" She looked pretty horrified, if he was being honest. He didn't stop. He had to get the words out. Sometimes the truth was just like that. "Loving you, Lena Duchans, is the greatest honor of my life. Even knowing you would be. But this is better. Ethan, I'm not afraid of what's going to happen to us. The universe can end all over again, and I've finally realized it doesn't matter." "No?" Lena smiled wistfully. "You're not holding out for a fairy tale ending?" Ethan shook his head. "This is real, and this is ours. This is my forever, as long as it lasts, and I'll take it. Some forever with you is better than 1,000 forevers with anyone else." "Even a fairy?" Lena blinked back tears, though she was smiling. She wiped her eye with one hand and then used the same hand to wipe Ethan's. "What would I want with a fairy?" He kissed the back of her now tear-streaked hand. "And like I said, even this, it's an owner. Just to be clear, I believe you mentioned that. Marry me. Don't marry me. Save the world with me or not. Love casts a long shadow, Lena Duchans. I don't know why I didn't figure it out before. You did. We both did. I think we worked all that out standing in the middle of Route 9 in the rain." Ethan tangled his fingers affectionately in her curls. "Maybe. All I know is, my mom is sitting on our back porch in some sunny other dimension, loving Macon Ravenwood as hard as he loves her, even if it's only from his dark dungeon of a library. And Amma's heart is so big, I can almost hear it pound, even though there's a sky between us." "Because love is the thing that stays," Lena said, leaning her head on his shoulder.
That's right, Ethan thought. He didn't even have to answer. She heard the words as he thought them. Because love. Okay, I'm ready.